Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Masters Show Live, entertainment, lifestyle, variety talk show series. Hope everybody's doing well today. We've got an extraordinary guest joining us from Washington State, where she says it's a little bit crazy in terms of the weather. She's happy to still have her Wi-Fi and her power. We're talking about Ms. Classic Beauty International. Carissa Daniels is joining us here on the show. And we thank you for joining us as well. Welcome. I'm your host, Jim Masters. We're going to have some great conversation, poignant, moving, and even at times riveting conversation as well as Carissa joins us on the show. Thanks for joining us, everybody. If you'd like to comment during the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, and you can comment in our JMS Levity Hall chat room, which is open and available right now for all of our subscribers. And it doesn't cost anything to do that. We thank you if you do that as well and help support what we're doing here. And and also don't forget to give this episode a like and leave a comment on our YouTube channel as well. Nice to have everybody here. Now, this is quite a story that Carissa is going to be sharing with us. She is truly a survivor, raised in a child abuse setting in a home with domestic violence. Her escapes were reading and, of course, music. And she's been very open about her story. At the age of 11, she began a solo career as a singer, guitar player, and songwriter. She's also a classically trained lyric soprano, and she's acted in musical theater. And it was after a musical rehearsal that she was stalked and then overpowered. And she was held prisoner for hours, and she was raped and assaulted. Eventually, the perpetrator left, and she survived the attack, unlike 3 of the other victims that the perpetrator had did things to and done things to. Brutally murdered in cold blood just months after Chris's attack. Eventually, he was executed for his crimes. So it's a horrific story from the beginning. Prior to the assault, Carissa was on the verge of creating a successful career in contemporary Christian music. A few months later, she was left disabled after a nearly fatal car crash as well, which is unbelievable. She jokes that when those in the know in the music business told her it was just a matter of time till she had a hit, she had no idea it would come from a pickup hitting her at 45 miles an hour, showing her little Mustang, sort of shoving that Mustang forward and sideways into oncoming traffic. Really an unbelievable chain of events, in her life on so many different levels. Eventually, she started over and thought she was, she would build a life, even if it wasn't the one that she had dreamed of. And she graduated from broadcast school and began working in radio. She met someone, but the man of her dreams was actually creating nightmares for her as well. We'll have her tell the rest of the story. It's absolutely unbelievable on so many different levels and truly extraordinary. Join me in welcoming our very special guest from Washington State, Carissa Daniels, to this episode of the Jim Masters Show Live series. Carissa, welcome to the show. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the story, as I mentioned just briefly, was really something. Growing up, it wasn't exactly the most pleasant of circumstances or households, right? Tell us a little bit about the story.
Correct. In fact, when I used to talk about it in an effort to joke, I would call it nightmare theater, which if you were from my time period, you would know that used to be an old TV series.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
late at night and it was very spooky, but it also had a silly aspect to it. And it was kind of my attempt at dark humor, trying to make something better out of something that was horrific and that I couldn't do anything about. I had tried to get out of it. I had tried to talk to people who could help me, and I was ignored. And I was basically stuck there until I was about 20. So it was not fun. Nice little caveat here. I am so grateful. About a little over a month ago, my dad got out and he is safe. In my case, it was my mom who was the primary aggressor and my dad who was the victim.
Mm.
And he is out and he is safe. She drove head on into oncoming traffic just before Christmas.
Wow.
And the distance of more than 3 football fields.
Mm.
And they had to cut him out of the car and he's had to start all over from learning to walk to everything.
Wow.
But his attitude is amazing. He's doing great. And it took many years, but he did get out. And that's what I'm thanking God for right now.
Absolutely. Continued prayers. I mean, that's absolutely unbelievable. So good to hear that he's in good spirits and in good shape after such a horrific experience. You were coming back from a music rehearsal and then were stalked?
Yeah. In fact, it started at the church. The rehearsal was at a church that I was working at with one of my mentors. And this guy approached me in the hall as I was running into rehearsal and would not move out of my way. I tried to get around him several times. That did not work. Finally, he ran directly into me and asked me a nonsense question. And the worst vibes I've ever had in my entire life from anybody. I just wanted to get away. I responded and I kept going. And as soon as I left, it was like, oh, thank God. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't know what it was about, but I'm just done. Got into rehearsal, shifted gears, did what I needed to do for about 3 hours. It's really hard work. So you get out of there and you're just wiped. And I headed straight for my car, didn't see anybody, but wasn't really looking. Got into the car, drove home, not knowing I was being followed. Got in my house, closed the door, put the key on the counter, and there was a knock at the door. And I did not have a peek hole. So I put my foot, braced it against the door, and tried to open the door an inch or so to find out who was there. Wrong thing. Don't ever do this. He pushed his way in to my house and held me prisoner for about 3.5 hours in my own home. And I was exhausted to start with, and then this. And finally, after about 3.5 hours, I grabbed my keys and tried to get out. And the minute I grabbed the keys, it was where do you think you're going? And he picked me up and bodily threw me across the room. My head hit the corner of the couch, bruised one side of my head. And as I was going through the air, I screamed, Jesus, which I don't know what you think about that, but at the moment, it was what I did.
Sure, absolutely. Jesus, get here now.
Yeah. And he looked at me when I said that. He looked at me and he said, you're crazy, lady, crazy. And it was like dumping cold water on his head, and he ran out the door. The minute he did that, of course, I was up and across and locked that door. But in the meantime, I had endured 3.5 hours of physical and sexual violence and horrific terror at this guy's hands. I didn't know who he was. All I knew was he had showed up at this church. I called my dad, who was my hero, and he came at, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. He dropped everything and came and got me, he and my mom. And I spent what was left of the night at their house. And I went to the doctor while my dad talked to the police. And then I met the police with my parents at a coffee shop and learned who he was and that he was a very bad dude. This was prior to the murders, but we still knew he was bad. And there was nothing I could do about it. Because in Washington State, at that point in time, the way the law read, I had opened the door. Remember that 1 inch? That was inviting him in, according to the law, even though I had not. So I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't prosecute. I couldn't do anything. That wound up actually saving my life, even though I didn't realize it yet. Because within a few months, he was on work release. And within a few months, he went back to a former victim who had testified against him, and her best friend, who had also testified against him, went to their home, terrorized them, and cold-bloodedly murdered them. And they found him and got him pretty quickly, but you're never the same. You never feel safe. In my case, one of my other mentors in music was in California. The minute she heard what had gone on, she said, "You're coming down here. Here's your plane ticket." And I went down and spent 3 weeks with her. And that was the safest I'd felt in years. She had a German-trained attack dog. She's in the music business. And she had a German-trained attack dog who would, in her words, guard me with his life. And at that point in time, I actually felt safe. But it was a nightmare. And when Renee and Barbara and Renee's little daughter, who was only 7, were killed, you couldn't comprehend what had happened. And for me, everything went emotionally on ice for a very long time because I couldn't deal with it. It was just too much. And then he was put to death eventually for the murders, rightfully so. If there is anybody who's unredeemable, he was it, without going into too much more. Bad situation. But he was put to death. In fact, he was put to death the day that I was due with my daughter. And so when that happened, I knew I was safe and that my child would be safe too. Had my daughter a week later.
That's incredible. That's an extraordinary story. And thanks for sharing that. And, I knew, like you said, you wanted to start over and thought you would be able to build a life after all of these things, the near fatal car accident, the being stalked and attacked. You went to broadcast school, began working in radio. I know that so well. And you met someone, the man of your dreams, but he was actually the creator of nightmares, and you became the victim of domestic violence with this as well. Mm-hmm. And then when your miracle daughter was 3, you went underground after he threatened your life, and eventually you moved to a place where nobody knew you guys, right?
Yes.
Your whole story, you really want to help people. You were certified as a victim advocate, but because of the disabilities that occurred, you weren't able to work in the shelters, which is what you wanted to do, because your ex would periodically go in looking for you guys and harassing. And then you got online seeking support and began volunteering to help other victims to get safe and get help, start over, and build successful new lives, right?
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, as you said, it's been a long journey. I didn't recognize the domestic violence for what it was in my case, because it was very different from the violence that I grew up with. When I was growing up, everybody knew what was going on, and everyone was aware but didn't do anything. So it was very out in the open. But when I got with my now ex-husband, he was very covert about what he did. He was special forces, and things that would happen behind closed doors that nobody else understood or would have believed at that point in time, because he was Mr. Wonderful. And on the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. In fact, I had done my first pageant just weeks before I left due to the domestic violence. And as a result of doing that pageant, winning my title, I went to the state capitol and got to meet with my governor. My picture was on the front of the Tacoma News Tribune. And we looked perfect. But it just goes to show you how deceptive appearances can be. Because I looked at that picture later and I could see in my eyes, they were haunted. And I could see all of the things that I had been living with right there. And when I left, I didn't have a choice. My daughter was at the time 3 years old, and he kept taking her and disappearing for days at a time, and he wouldn't tell me where they were going. He wouldn't answer his cell phone. And after doing this, he was gone for more than 3 days that last time. And I had called the crisis clinic because I was going out of my mind, worried about my daughter. And I finally called a friend of mine who was a cop. And he said, you need to know this. This is a domestic violence situation. And if you don't get her and get out, you're going to lose her, because he's practicing to take her and go for good. And so he said, you need to do it now. So I got a hold of another friend who at that point was the director of a shelter, and circled the day on the calendar. I did not write anything, but it had a nice big red circle on it. And that was my memo that said, this is the day we're out of here. Eventually, he did bring her back. And then things got ratcheted up a notch there, because I put her in bed and I stayed in there for a good 30 minutes. I was pretty freaked out. And I stayed in there and I was praying, and I was just, help me through this. I can't do it. And walked out that door into pitch black. He had turned every light in the house off. He was special forces. He always said the darkness was his friend. It activated his spidey sense. And that's what I walked into. And it was like suffocating, is what it felt like walking out. And I went, okay, you can do this. Just breathe. And I walked towards the kitchen, and he was in the living room, and he had been in the hallway pacing like a caged animal. And I went out to the kitchen to get my meds. He said, we need to chat. I said, okay, I'll be right there. Walked out to the living room, and he ordered me out of my own house, and I was to leave my daughter behind. I tried for about 45 minutes to talk him out of it, but he wasn't going to have it. He was determined. So it was what it was, and that was it. And he had made the decision. What he didn't know was I had already made my decision, because I needed to get both of us out. He left, thank God, back to the girlfriend's house. And I stopped cleaning my house and I started putting away what I could put away. I stopped cleaning my house because if stuff is all over, you don't notice if anything is missing. So you do what you got to do. And started putting away what I could put away, doing what I could do to get ready. The day arrived and I was getting ready to do what I had to do, and he came in the door. It was like he knew what was going on. I don't think he did, but it sure felt like he did. Well, I'm taking you to class because we had a preschool co-op that I did with my daughter. And so he was going to take us to class. So I went, okay, just keep playing along. Do what you got to do. And I earned my Oscar that day and got to class, told the preschool teacher on the side when he was not around, we're leaving. She says, okay. And her face didn't really change, but she raised her voice and she said, today we're making gap, boys and girls.
Mm.
Well, and then underneath, she tells me, she said, this should help with some of the stress that you're under. It was just spur of the moment. She just did it. And she was amazing. After class was over, got picked up by him again. He didn't take us home. He took us to lunch. And I had to eat cardboard pizza and keep playing the game. Took us back to the house. I was raped for the final time. The only thing that's good about that is it was the last time. It would never happen again. And from there, he finally took off. And I called police and said, I need a standby. They said, we don't have anybody available. So I'm taking apart all of the little pieces on my stereo and breaking everything down while I'm on the phone because they don't have anybody that they can send to come and do the standby, because he had before done things where he had taken off and he'd come back to check on us 3 or 4 minutes later or 20 minutes later. And I didn't know that he wasn't going to do that again. I was completely without wheels. I ran my daughter across to a friend's house and made sure it wasn't my best friend because that would be the first place he would go. But ran my daughter over there and I said, can you please watch her for a little while? I'll be back in just a little bit. I have some stuff I have to do. So I took her over there. I said, do not let him have her. No matter what, don't let him have her. Made him promise. Took what I had gotten out to storage. And the sad thing is I lost all of that, but that's a whole other thing. But I got all of that taken care of. And then I had my diaper bag, my purse, a small bag of stuff for my daughter, and a double stroller and her. And I had to leave my 2 greyhounds behind. I still haven't gotten over that. That's a hard one.
That's a tough one. Yeah. Like
I had
family.
tried for 10 days to get somebody to watch them, and I couldn't get anybody to watch them. But I normally, because of his public persona, I was basically at that point somewhat dependent on the fact that everybody knew we had those dogs. So he probably wouldn't do anything. Well, he didn't, but his girlfriend did. Greyhounds, we had retired racers. And they're these amazing dogs, incredible. And they're not street smart. And you have to have them on a leash. They run about 3 times as fast as the fastest human athlete. They're amazing. Well, Ripster Doggy, my 100-pound greyhound, was deliberately let out by the girlfriend. And we don't know what happened. Vicky dog died of cancer. She was so bonded to my ex that I knew that would be fine. I was most worried about Rickster, but he was just gone. That was that. I got to a phone, called the shelter, let them know I was out. They said, we had to give your place away. So we're going to put you in a hotel for a few days. I said, that works. So we went and stayed in a hotel for a few days. And when we had walked out the door that last time, I stopped just outside the door and I looked at my little 3-year-old daughter. She was 3 going on 25. She's gifted. And so she's light years ahead of most kids. So she knew a lot of what was going on. I'd never told her, but she knew. And what do you tell a kid at that moment? You have to tell them something because they're going to ask. And I bent down and got on her level and I said, we are going on an adventure. I don't know where we're going to go or just what we'll do, but you will be safe and we're going to go on an adventure. My daughter is 28 today. She remembers that conversation.
She remembers that vividly. Isn't that something?
Yes. Yes. And she said, I knew we would be safe, Mom. I knew we would.
Exactly. You created this online situation. Within a few months, the virtual group went from 12 members to hundreds and then thousands. You were volunteering 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to keep up with the women who needed help. And that's a lot for a single person, right? With the help of the other woman who had trained her in basic in-person advocacy, and of course, a terrific mentor for you, created a specialized program for cyber advocates, which is fascinating. The program, which includes 50 plus hours of class time plus additional time in the group assisting victims, unlike anything else available at the time. This was back in 2007. And the work that you did ranged from safety planning and resources help to support for those in crisis, as well as creating an Angels and Elves holiday adoption program and holiday virtual baby showers. That's incredible. What was that all like?
Oh, that was so fun. What wound up happening is when women get out, they're in all phases of the process. And you have some that have just found out that they're pregnant or are several months along maybe, but they have nothing. And they've had to completely start over. And knowing this and knowing they couldn't just go out and have their friends do a baby shower, because if they did, they were endangering themselves. And so we put our heads together, a couple of us in the group, and we said, why not? Let's do this. And so this was before Zoom was a thing. But what we did was we let them know that we're going to do a virtual shower for so-and-so. And this is what she needs. And most of the time then we didn't know whether it was going to be a boy or a girl. But we had people within the group that had either been survivors that had been helped themselves or were there to help others. And some of them would make blankets. That's actually, I made a baby blanket. Some of us would make other baby items. I had one gal, she is amazing. We're still friends, even though the site has metamorphosed into something completely different. And so we're not able to work on there. I'm helping out another site at this point, but we're still friends. And she had put together an entire thing for this baby. This baby had hats. She had little baby dresses. She had everything. And all of these items were sent then to the address that we had for this gal. She was able to pick this stuff up, bring it home. She took pictures of everything, and then she posted all the pictures online. And it was the coolest thing at that point in time, because we didn't have to be there to stand in a gap and to reach up and to help this person. And that can be the difference between somebody making it and somebody who can't. So it was an amazing experience to be part of that. I'm not hearing you.
Some of the victims themselves, the support for those victims included helping suicidal victims get through their difficulties and helping a woman who had been beaten for 3 days to get out safely with her 3-month-old, despite being locked in the house with no easy way to get out and no phone, like you're mentioning, while the abuser was in the front yard drinking with his buddies. You also successfully networked with nonprofit organizations and individuals to get assistance and hot food to survivors who are starting over, including a mom with 7 children and no food, and another mom in an apartment with nothing but her laptop and a sleeping bag, after a bureaucrat who didn't know the rules took away supports that survivor needed. Incredible.
Yeah. I look back, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is the fact that whatever was tossed at us, we found ways to work with. And being able to, once again, stand in the gap and see something needed to be done and just improvising to find a way to do it, because that's all you could do at that point in time. I was not about to let somebody starve. I had a gal that was living in her car. I was not with her kids who were disabled. Was not about to just let that happen without trying to fix it. And I always, one of my favorite sayings, and everybody will tell you this is, they hear this a lot from me. Well, I can't make any promises, but let me see what I can do. And so a lot of the time, what I would do is I would pick up my phone and I would either start making calls or sending emails and connecting however I could. In the case of the mom, that all she had was her computer and nothing else. She had moved into this new place, but she didn't have any housewares, and she'd had everything was ripped out from under her, but she had an amazing landlord. Landlord said, "You're not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out." But she had no food in her house. She had not had a hot meal in over a week. And I found out on a Friday night at 8 o'clock at night. And I have to chuckle because I was doing community theater at the time. So I was in a theater rehearsal when I found out. And we took a break. And the minute we took a break, I started picking up my phone and making phone calls. And of course, nobody was there because this was back east and it was 3 hours later and no one was answering their phones at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. So I tried leaving messages, and then I went, okay, there's got to be a way around this. What do I do? So I went, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to call at 7 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, and hope somebody's there. And because I'm in the Pacific, it's 3 hours later here. So I had to slide things a little bit a lot of the time. So that's what we did. And I finally got a hold of somebody at Salvation Army. And he said, "Where are you at?" I laughed and I said, "Washington State." And then I had to, of course, explain to him, this is how we do what we do. And this is the work that we do. And he said, "I totally understand the whole bureaucrat thing." He said, "Living here, this kind of thing happens actually a lot." And he said, "You're in the right place." And he said, "I will make sure that she hooks up with the things she needs, starting with the hot meal." And so I was able to connect the two of them. And she had her first hot meal that she'd had in a week. And she got a hold of me later And that was another teary moment for me. I cried a lot when I was doing this job. And it was just because watching what was happening, and it's like I had the front seat of the car, but I wasn't the driver. I was just watching it all take place and just almost being in awe of what I was seeing happen. And she did just fine. Once she got food, they hooked her up with housewares. She was good to go. But it's a process, and sometimes it works better than others. And you just do what you can do.
We had mentioned before through all of this that before any of these things, you were on your way to a successful career as a contemporary Christian music artist, right?
Yes.
You're a classically trained lyric soprano. You acted in musical theater, but, solo career, singer, guitar player, songwriter at the age of 11. But the domestic violence in your house, and then being stalked and assaulted and raped and all of that, and then the near fatal car crash, and then the husband who turned out to be a violent abuser, and all of these things stunted this ability. Is it something that you would still like to do? Would you still like to sing and perform for everybody?
One part of me would absolutely love to be able to do this. I don't even know if it can happen at this point. On top of everything else, I went through a bad situation at my job. I was working after 9/11 and went through an anthrax scare, breathe white powder. Stuff got in my lungs, and it has messed with my health big time. We found out I have a rare disease, mast cell activation syndrome, and it's in my lungs and throughout my body. And so right at the moment, it's not a possibility. However, my asthma doctor did tell me, he said, I want you doing music therapy. I want you singing. He knows my background and he knows all of that. And one of the things they found, mast cell activation syndrome is an awful lot like COVID. So I've had the equivalent of COVID for 8 years. But one of the things that is the case that they have found actually in the UK is that music helps healing for COVID patients. And so that's one of the things that my doctor wants for me. And I periodically, I will try, and I have a hard time. My daughter looked at me one night and she said, Mom, I know why you're having a hard time with this. She said, you have perfect pitch. It's driving you nuts. I said, yes, that's it. Because when you can't hear it properly and your lungs are messed up so you can't sing it properly, you don't want to sing. Trust me.
You don't want to share that with the world, right?
No. And yet I believe that somehow underneath all of that, my voice is still there. I've actually had somebody who knows music tell me it's still there. I can hear it. And it's the thing that I've dreamed of since I was 5 years old. That was supposed to be my life. And it's what I wanted more than anything else. I lived it, breathed it, ate it, slept it. Everything was for my music. And I used to go back to Estes Park, Colorado every year for a very intensive musical training every summer. And I was working a day job to pay the bills. And I'd come back to my day job and they'd say, well, how was your trip? And in a very deep Southern drawl, I'd come back with, oh, it was absolutely wonderful. And they'd go, you went where? But always my roommates were from the South, because that's where the music was. And I would go back there and I would compete. I did well in competition. And I was writing my own stuff. And in fact, I met my very, very best friend and music mentor, my substitute mom, back in Estes Park. And she's the one who flew me out to California after the bad situation. But that was only one of about 4 trips to California that I made, to go down and just spend time with her and the kids. We're all grown up now, and I still can't believe that, but that's another
That
story.
went fast, didn't it?
But when I was going through the worst of it, Gloria was there for me. She was there always. She said, call me collect, but call me. And this tells you how long ago this started, but I was in my 20s, so. But I would call her from a phone booth sometimes and say, this is what's going on. And she was always there for me. She always found a way to support me and to help me through the whole thing, and let me know that I was not alone in all of this, because I think sometimes that can be the hardest part of dealing with trauma, is the fact that we are so alone. There is nobody but us to depend on. And when we know all of our foibles, we know all of the things that we're not good at, it makes it very difficult for us to feel confident in anything, aside from the input that we're getting from an abuser. But with Gloria, it wasn't like that. And I thank God she really is one of the big reasons I think I'm still here.
Mm. It really sounds like it. She's a jewel in your life on many levels, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I want to let folks know that over 14 years, Carissa and her team have helped more than 12,000 victims and survivors globally in what she has described as an advocacy without borders on what was at the time the largest women's networking website, called Cafe Mom. As you mentioned, when the site lost funding, it disappeared, no warning. But, you also, did what you had to do with social media, and some of the victims found you. Your experiences have also showed you that the calling of advocating for vulnerable people and helping survivors heal and start over and build successful new lives is a calling for you.
Yes.
And you help them, like you've learned yourself, to realize that they can do it. And you mentor and lead by example. You walk the walk and talk the talk on many different levels. And just before you left your violent ex-husband, you had been awarded the first state title in communication skill-based competition. And you made the front, as you said, of the newspaper in the state. And that's incredible. And I know that was really exciting to see that happen. Just for folks who are joining us late, sort of reminding people this incredible story. And you had turned it into a domestic violence education monologue. And it explains how abusers use the system to further abuse the victim after they leave, and why leaving doesn't stop the abuse. The first time you performed the monologue publicly, national stage, and many of those present knew that it was a true story. You got that standing ovation, and you won the talent for the division. And participating in that first competition, as you mentioned, was really to fulfill a dream. But after speaking with the press, the public remembered the story. Victims recognized you without the crown and the banner, and would approach you in public to ask for help. Some have gotten out safely as a direct result of the contact, but the crown makes you more memorable, knowing you can make the difference, even saving lives. And that's what is truly what is motivating you right now on many different levels. I want people, our audience, to know, the viewers, that can be competing and the volunteer work that you have done have helped you heal from the painful past and actually build confidence. And you're actually today, which I think is so cool, you're teaching workshops and you mentor other victims and survivors. You're writing the first book. You're looking for that agent, working on building a career as a speaker, and still enjoying working with the media. And now you're on the other side of the mic, speaking as an expert. And you were challenged, of course, to increase the virtual with the pandemic, like a lot of people have. And your media workers include work with Forbes and Women's E! News, Maria Shriver's Shriver Report, and USA Today, and also local television news channels. And you're in a small minority of people authorized to testify before the Washington state and U.S. national legislators as well. Tell us about that.
That actually came about. The judge, when I had final settlement with my daughter's custody portion of things, stated that I was not to speak publicly because I could risk losing custody of my daughter. And without opening a whole lot of doors on that, because that's a whole other thing, I was basically banned from speaking. What happened with working online, because I was using a screen name that was not my physical legal name, I was freed to be able to speak and to tell our story and to do what we needed to do. One of the things that happened with winning my titles at the same time this other was going on was that I got contacted about speaking to the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence on some issues. And my ex found us, we had to move. That's how I wound up getting set up with them and was able to get into another safe housing situation with their help. And then an opportunity came up through them to be able to support the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which was at that point in time just coming up for reauth. And they needed a survivor to come and speak and tell their story. And she sent me an email and she said, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, where and when? I'm in. My daughter was 6 weeks from turning 18, and I went, this is close enough. We are going to it. And so she went with me, which was even more cool because it was her first time of actually hearing and seeing me do what I do in that way.
Mm.
And my daughter she's definitely my kid, she actually has video of that entire press conference
Wow.
that she took of the whole thing. And I got to tell my story. I made it in papers across the United States.
Mm.
It was on BuzzFeed. It was on just all over the place. And the big thing, though, was, I loved what they picked because what they picked as their little soundbite was VAWA works. I am proof that VAWA works because we are alive today. And that's what they picked. And it took them a year for the entire process. I was actually invited back to Washington, D.C. to testify before the Senate. I was not able to do that because of lack of finances, which has been an issue here. So I'm working on that. But I wound up, Marie Cantwell got a hold of me and she said, may I share your story? Because that was before we had virtual stuff. I said, yes, absolutely. And so I was sitting at a computer at my school, watching the conference go down, watching all of the debates being done. And I sat there and I watched as my story was told on the floor of the United States Senate during debate on VAWA. And you better believe I was crying like a baby because I
That
never
makes sense.
dreamed in a
Sure.
million years
That
that
this would be the case.
this would happen. But that's when I realized how powerful this is and how important what I do really is. Because I'm not just speaking for me, I'm speaking for all the other victims who cannot speak. That's why this is important. That's why this matters. I'm a voice, and I can do that. And in a way that's bigger than music. I still love my music. Don't get me wrong for a minute. But if I can do this, I can impact that kind of change. You better believe I'm going to do it.
You returned and won the international title for the Ms. Division back in 2022, knowing that having the international title will enable to really help you form public policy at the highest levels, and connect with other survivors, which is so incredibly important, and really sort of support them to the best of your ability on so many different levels. Uh, Tell us about all of that. And that's absolutely amazing because you're supporting them and sort of building success while creating for yourself a successful career as a speaker.
Yes, that's the whole plan behind this whole thing, is to be able to not just get myself to a place where I am good financially and all of that, but to be able to get that story out and to be able to support other people who are survivors, help us all to work on healing our trauma. And one of the things that I have found that really helps the most with all of this is being able to connect with other survivors and being able to know that they understand, they get it. So it's so important to me.
Do you see the comment that's on the screen? Anything you'd like to say to Deedles?
I am so, so sorry. This is the reason I do what I do. I very nearly lost my daughter, so I kind of understand. I know losing one has to be the worst thing in the world. Just please understand that you're not alone.
That's the main thing, really, is to know that you're not alone and there are people who also, you know, uh, have gone through these kinds of things as horrific as they are. Um, the key is it's got to stop. It's got to be. Domestic violence actually went up during the pandemic when people were home. Couples and partners who usually were busy with their lives were now home and sort of re-meeting each other. And there's been a lot of separation and divorce and dissolution of arrangements as a result of everybody being in the same airspace. And it's been quite an experiment or experience on many levels, what we've gone through the last couple of years, and really has brought out or taken the veil off a lot of different things in life, hasn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. And with the domestic violence, the thing is, even though they're saying now that the pandemic is behind us, it's really not. And the domestic violence levels are still higher than they should be. They're still, not that anything is acceptable, but they're higher than they were prior to the pandemic. And there's less resources.
Mental health too is tied to a lot of this as well, and the economy and just all the different things that are going on all at the same time. You are a beautiful and extraordinary and heartfelt, heart-centered inspired person that is very, when people watch this or they just know your work, it's uplifting, it's inspiring. It can take a situation that somebody's going through and let them know that there is hope, that the road may seem incredibly rocky and filled with gravel and maybe even flooded out, but that if you can somehow find resources like yourself and surround yourself with positivity and love, there are ways to lift up from the darkness, whatever the darkness may be. There isn't a person on this planet. I don't care if somebody that you know posts social media that makes it look like they never even go to the bathroom. Everybody hurts, everybody bleeds, everybody has pain, everybody gets scared, everybody is disappointed and sometimes goes through anxiety and depression. Everybody has loss. Everybody, sometimes your car doesn't start and you get a flat tire and you stub your toe and you lose this job and then there's triumphs and beautiful things that happen and life to be lived. And you, through all of this horrificness, which would, on many levels, put somebody under a rock with the shades down, never to be seen or heard from again, you went towards the fire. You said, wait a minute, I've experienced this personally, and there's got to be some way to put an end to this, but also there's got to be a way to comfort those who are going through it. The person that's experienced the abuse, the children that are witness to it or have to live through the dissolution of what they thought might have been a beautiful family relationship, because the children want to feel safe. They want a safe environment. They don't want to live in an environment, and you know, because you did live in it, where there's yelling and screaming and throwing of pots and pans and holes in walls and people physically fighting and slapping the kid and sending them to bed and not caring, because then that kid absorbs that and sometimes repeats it. You are a perfect example of somebody who went to the darkest places you could go to, and have found ways to lift up and help others through. Where do you think, through all of this, that spirit, that passion, the understanding that that is your calling, where does that come from within you? Where are those reserves to be able to do that, to wake up every day and continue the fight on behalf of others, having experienced so much yourself? Where do you think that comes from within Carissa?
I think for me, the big thing is when I look around and see others that are in a similar situation, and we all do this together. Nobody really is alone, even though it sometimes feels like we are. I think most of my inspiration comes from seeing those who I am helping when they get it, when they have that light bulb moment. It also comes from the moments when I look out at an audience and I'm in the middle of a performance of my monologue, for example, and I see the moment that that hits and they understand, oh, so leaving doesn't really fix this. This is a bigger problem than I knew. Those are the kinds of things that for me really keep me going and help me to be able to keep shining the little light that I have. I feel like it's an LED.
Yes, exactly right. Especially the crown on top. That's definitely an LED.
And this was a 5-year journey.
Tell
This
us
was
all about it.
5
Tell us
years.
about the crown that's on your head, the Ms. Classic Beauty International. Congratulations. What that's all about, what it represents, and that fabulous crown that you adorn on your locks.
I had no idea the first time that I won a title, the impact that this was going to have on my life. This was something I'd wanted to do from the time I was a little girl. And I never got to do it because we know what's back there. And I could never get permission to do it because we don't want anyone flaunting themselves. So, but
Right now, that's all anybody does.
yeah,
Isn't that amazing how times have changed?
it's so weird, isn't it? But um, I found out when I was actually looking for scholarship money for my daughter when she was 3. She's gifted. And she was saying octopus and elevator when other kids were learning mama and dada.
Octopus and elevator, not so
Yeah,
easy, especially kids have trouble with
esophagus.
the esophagus.
Esophagus was a favorite.
Esophagus and L's. Kids sometimes have trouble with the L's early on. So
Yeah.
elevator, that's cool.
Yeah, no, she was light years ahead. So the University of Washington told me, you need to start saving for college now for her because she's going to need it.
Because
So I
she's
was
gonna
out
go
looking, yeah,
take it
looking
by storm.
for funds to do that, and ran across a beautiful baby competition. And of course, my ex-husband was not thrilled. But when was he? Anyway, I started doing some research, and the guy who cut my hair was a pageant consultant. And he said, you should check into one for you. And I went, yeah, no, they don't have pageants for people like me. And he said, oh, yes, they do. I went, you're kidding. And he said, no, I'm not. Here. And he threw a pageantry magazine at me, and I picked it up, and that was when the journey began. And I was, 42 when I started that journey. And for several years while I was going through this process, I was dealing with the domestic violence and the aftermath. And so I couldn't compete. I couldn't do anything along those lines. I was trying to survive and needed money for basic survival. And so, but I had won a title right before I left. And I had to call the director from shelter and say, I'm not going to make it because I'm in shelter. I'm safe, but I don't know when this is going to be over with. And that was, in fact, how the monologue came about. But what wound up happening is it took me 10 years to get to the finals. And she basically said, we will hold your place.
Yes.
And so it took me 10 years to get there. And that was when I won my national talent title and took steps forward on that. Well, as part of this process, one of the things that happens is you get to go out and do special appearances. So you're out and about in your crown and banner, and you're representing your organization and your platform, the thing that you are most passionate about, that you're spending hours and hours on. And so I was doing that. So I began to be known all over the place for what I do. And at the time, I was riding public transportation, and I'd get on a bus, and the bus driver would say, so what you doing now? Where are you going? And be asking about what was happening as far as competition related stuff and the special appearances and whatnot. So we had this communication thing that was going on. And when it really hit me was the day that I was up at the grocery store, got my groceries, headed back out to grab a bus. And here's a girl out there, and she looks at me and she goes, I think I know you. And I'm going, oh. She's, yeah, you're the gal that was in the news not too long ago. That's a domestic violence survivor, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. And she says, have you got a minute? I need to talk. I said, yeah, absolutely. She says, I'm in a domestic violence situation and I need to get out. And I don't know what to do or how to do it. So I sat down and I gave her the name and phone number of the local organization that could help her with that. And I gave her my email address as well. And turned around and walked away. Now, that never would have happened if it had not been for the crown and banner. I didn't have to wear it all the time. I wore it just enough for people to understand that it means something. It's, if you want to call it that, a billboard. It's something that gets the message across so people remember. And that was the day that I realized that something special was happening there. About a week later, I heard back from her. Not only did she get out, but I helped her daughter get out as well. That never would have happened if it hadn't been for the crown and the banner and the work that I do with the media. That's why this is powerful. That's why, even though I thought, hung up my crown and banner because of health issues 6 years ago, I guess it was, I came back. I got a message and somebody said, there's this competition and would you be interested? And it's virtual. I went, virtual, I can do. And that didn't take long. There was not much arm twisting there. But I got involved with that. And once I started, I realized that for me, this was an important piece of what I do. And so it's not just about collecting a pretty crown and banner, although I have a lot of those. Those are nice. But it's about so much more. It's about connecting with other people, using that crown and banner as an opportunity to reach people I couldn't reach otherwise. So 5 years ago, I started competing in Royal Productions, which is part of the competition that I'm in right now. And I began working with them before they turned international. So I actually started out as Ms. Washington. And then when they made that transition a few years ago, I transitioned over and I became Ms. Sweden, which is part of my heritage is.
Swedish.
Yes, Scandinavian.
Jane, who's watching in Sweden, would be very happy to hear
Fun.
that, right, Jane? Yeah, she's up. It's like 2 in the morning there. She goes, "You're a fantastic person, so strong after all you've gone through." Jane watches us live from Sweden. She's one of our lovely viewers.
Wow.
Yeah, we've got
Thank
that
you, Jane.
international audience. Yeah.
Well, I competed for Sweden for a little while, and
My great
wound up
grandmother
winning
on my mother's side comes from Sweden too. My mother's grandmother comes from Sweden, Gothenburg, and then they settled in Boston. She was a princess, grew up in a castle.
Oh.
Her family, part of the Swedish royalty, father, a general in the Swedish army. This is my great grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And that the castle still exists there in Sweden.
Oh, wow.
Kind of cool, huh? I knew
Yeah.
there was a reason why I love Swedish meatballs.
Well, and I didn't know until the pandemic. It was so funny because my daughter is brilliant when it comes to languages, amongst other things. She speaks like 6 languages. And when the pandemic hit and we were all bored out of our minds sitting at home, my daughter said, you know, Mom, you should try learning some Swedish. And I have a head injury, both from the accident and from everything else. And so I was basically told, forget about learning languages and forget about math, because those aren't going to work for you. And I proceeded to do so. Well, when the pandemic hit, I went, I have nothing to lose. I'm just sitting here.
Yeah, right.
So I picked up Duolingo and I started playing with it. And the next thing you know, about probably a week or so in, I looked at my daughter and I said, this is so weird. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it right every time. And then my memories started coming back. My grandpa Cecil, my dad's dad, his wife, my step grandma, was Scandinavian. She was the only grandma I had on that side that I knew, as my dad's real mom died when he was 13. And her best friend lived just down the way, and her best friend's hubby was Danish. We had a Dane, a Swede, and a Norwegian.
Wow.
And,
Trifecta.
oh, yeah, it was great. When I was little.
The only thing missing was a fin.
Yeah, yeah. When I was little, my grandpa would kidnap me and take me up to the beach frequently. And I think he knew what was going on at home and wanted me out of there. It's about what happened. But he would take me up to Camano Island, and they have a place right on the water that it was beautiful. That's where I spent my growing up. That's where I think of as home, even though it's not in the family anymore. But while he was at work, Grandma Nellie and I would be going down and visiting with Sven and Ada. And we did cooking and we did other fun things. All the while, they were speaking Swedish.
Mm.
I had forgotten this. My grandma died when I was 8.
Mm.
And so, and I don't have, because of the trauma, I don't have a lot of memories from when I was young. And so this started coming back when I was 8 years, or from when I was 8 years old. And the conversation that I remember just a little piece of the most, that I wish I could remember more, and hopefully someday I will, was the day that Sven came in and said something. And I don't know what it was now, but I think I did at the time. But the women looked at him and said, stop talking like that. She's here. This was all said in Swedish. And he came back with,
I don't really imagine what he said.
Oh, I'm dying to know what it was. Because whatever it was must have been good. But I had forgotten about that until I was studying Swedish. And this came back. And then I remembered myself being 8 years old and saying, God, please help me to remember my Swedish. I don't want to lose that. Because when Grandma died, there was nothing more. And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And now I'm acing Swedish.
It's incredible.
Slowly but surely.
Are there some words that you can say that you recall?
Mitt namn är Carissa Alexandra Daniels och jag är Ms. Classic Beauty International.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
My pronunciation may not be great.
But you're working at it like everything else. Tell us about Survival2Success Academy that you created. That's incredible.
Well, I've been doing actually a lot of mentoring and working. It started out one-on-one with other survivors, with other people dealing with trauma, and just with women in general, to find ways to support. And it kind of has evolved in this direction. So it became a case of, okay, well, this is where I was going. I didn't know quite yet where I was going as things were happening until I got to a certain point. And then I started realizing, no, what this is the ability to support other people as they're taking their journey, and to help them with the things that I've learned and to learn from them too, because we learn from each other. That's how this works. But Survival2Success Academy grew out of the work that I did online with survivors and victims. And it also grew from the work that I did in person with people that I knew that were brought into my life at various points and that I have supported and helped and been there for. And so Survival2Success Academy came out of that, along with the book, which actually is a piece of that, because a lot of what I do is I use my own story, my own experiences, plus the things that I've learned both from professionals and from experiences to help support and create a life. And that is for myself, but it's also for a whole lot of other people that are beginning to learn from this. And the goal is really, it goes beyond creating a life for me, because I feel like what I'm doing is I'm creating a legacy. That's the way that I see this. Is when the thing that makes me the most excited, and I can tell you this actually started too when I was working online, starting in 2007. But the thing that has done the most for me is being able to then see the people that I helped, who helped someone else, who helped someone else, and it goes 5 or 6 or 7 generations down. And I just see this going on and on and on. And it's amazing. Once again, I'm in the front seat, but I'm not the driver. And
Right.
it's incredible.
So amazing. There's the website, folks. Check it out, survival2success.com. This has been absolutely extraordinary, Carissa. And I really appreciate your being so open and honest and real and relatable, because that's the only way to be. And it really is inspiring and empowering for others who may be going through domestic violence, may have, a situation where physically there's a disability due to an accident or just anything that anybody goes through in life. And to know that there are people are out there who are relatable, who truly care, who understand, and who want to help. That's beautiful to know, and very inspiring for all of us as we go through this journey that we call life together. So I applaud you for all that you've done, all that you have been able to get yourself through, and all that you're doing to help and support and care for others along the way. And, whether it's Ms. Classic Beauty International or not, I think you deserve the crown anyway, no matter what it is, just for being you and for being so spirited. And we've got some wonderful comments coming in. You've really been touching a lot of our viewers, or we call them the Lovities. So you're now a Jim Master Show Lovity. You are definitely one of our Lovity Squad members now. And Lovity is basically love and levity put together. And I happened to stumble on that when it came out of my mouth too fast. And Mr. Worldwide, we welcome you as well. And he says, being so strong, being so proud, I hope one day I can be as strong as you, Carissa. See, that's the thing. You're inspiring so many others who might not be at that place yet in their lives. But over time, seeing that you did it and are doing it and continue to do it, it's very, very inspiring for others to know that they can do it too. So thanks so much. I hope that you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you and our friend who we both know, Wayne Scott Lucas. We appreciate him as well. He's an amazing, passionate, spirited individual as well. And we thank him. And I hope the show met whatever expectations you had and you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you, Carissa.
Very much so. Thank you so much for the invitation. and for the time. It's been wonderful.
I wish you nothing but continued blessing and joy in your life, and keep us posted on everything that you're doing. Because again, it's work of kind of like the divine on earth that you're doing, and it's in your DNA. And
It is.
we're so glad that you're here, and your daughter, and you guys are doing well, and that you've been able to share the story in such a heartfelt and authentic and real way. It's very moving, and it's very reassuring and hope fostering for others who may be watching live or watching this later in our archives, because we will be archiving this entire episode. And hopefully that there is something that is a nugget that our viewers getting out of this. And Mr. Worldwide says, 3 years on and I still can't reach out. I'm terrified of reliving what I've been through. What about that? What about sometimes in order to get through it, you have to sort of talk it out and relive?
It's important to pick someone to speak with who you
And Mr.
trust.
Worldwide is, I'm female. Sorry, not a Mr. I'm actually a Mrs. So the handle is Mr. Worldwide 305, but she's a female.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and
I'm
still,
used to screen names being very different from who we
screen names
are.
sometimes are not, the name could be Ralph, and it turned out that Ralph is a female, or you just never know.
It's
But we
okay.
welcome her to the show, and she's opening and sharing, and says, I'm numb, so numb. My only way of coping is to block it out. Did you do that as well?
I did, especially when it came to the Campbell rape, and the whole thing that went with that. That was blocked out for, I would say, 20 years. A long time.
20
It was
years.
just too much to deal with.
I
We can
interviewed
only deal with so much at one time.
with somebody professionally, my professional work, television news interview, with a female who was attacked at college by somebody in her dorm room, a male. And I don't recall if it was her boyfriend or if it was just a male that, knocked on the door and then burst in and then attacked her. But it was to the point where she lost her voice physically for 10 years, could not utter a sound. The voice actually contracted. And when I say the voice, I'm not meaning just her, persona or her personality or her opinions. Her physical voice, 10 years, couldn't utter a sound. And she had to go through a lot of different, the doctors were saying it may never come back and all of these things, because the trauma was so tremendous that it actually, stress and trauma obviously does affect the mind and body.
Yeah.
But fortunately, she has been able to get her voice back and talks about it in a beautiful way. But that can happen too. The physical reactions to things in our lives can be really rough stuff.
Absolutely. They can be the worst. Trust me. I still deal with a lot of residual stuff, and I still work with the counselor. And that's part of being healthy and continuing that healing process, because we're all in that healing process. Even those of us who haven't been through huge things have still been through some tough stuff. And it's okay to work with somebody to get help.
She says, he's taken me away from me, if that makes sense. It does. He's destroyed me as a person. I am still 3 years later the person he told me I was. He's destroyed me. Any words for that individual?
I think the most important thing I would say in that case is that it's time to reach out and find someone that you can work with who is a professional, because they're going to be the ones that'll be able to help you the most. One of the things that I've really had to learn with what I do is there are limits to what I can do. I'm not a professional, and I don't pretend to be a professional. I am there as support and do the things that I can do to help. But I highly, highly recommend finding somebody who is trauma informed and is a therapist who can help with that. And I know it's hard. It's really tough. I've actually been looking for a couple of years for a really good one. I have an interim therapist myself right now, because that's how hard it is, even when you know what to ask for and the places to look. But this is an area that we really need to look at in our healthcare system.
Yes. Yes. Our healthcare system needs to be completely overhauled. On the cost of everything, overpriced, rip off, unbelievable. People can't even get basic medicines without having to remortgage their house. It's just ridiculous. And a lot of times, a lot of the pharmaceutical medicines are made here, and it costs us here, where it comes from, through the roof. Something's a little awry with all that. Healthcare should be a given. It should be a given on many levels, and good quality. Not that you just get it, but good quality. I mean, we do have great hospitals and doctors and all, but still, sometimes the access is not available for people, and that is a big, big problem. And says, I've tried it so hard. I'm desperate to speak to people who have been through physical abuse. You've been through it. Well, Survival2Success.com, the academy. I mean, there's a starting point right there. Reach out. There's the starting point right there. Our guest, Carissa Daniels, has lived it, been through it, and understands it. And sometimes there are times where there is next level, like a therapist, like psychologists, like other medical professionals that do need to come into the scenario, but at least to talk and have a relatability. Survival2Success.com, and Carissa, she's the founder of it, is a good starting point. So if that helps, people don't seem to get how much it damages someone as a person forever without the support. He went to prison for 3 years. Everybody's saying, don't give up. Give yourself time to heal. That's true. That's what it is.
It can take years. It can take a long time, but you are worth it, regardless of how long it takes. You matter, and you're worth it. You said he went to prison for 3 years. Is he out now? Are you in a safe place?
She says, unfortunately, I have agoraphobia.
Okay, well, that's when online is a really good gift. I do, the work that I do with my therapist is online. I don't have to leave my house. That's probably the one good thing that came out of the pandemic, is the fact that we have so much more available to us now online, that there are other resources. So don't give up.
Don't give up. Bottom line, don't give up. Survival2Success.com. Our special guest, Ms. Classic Beauty International and founder of Survival2Success Academy, Carissa Daniels. Thanks for stopping by our show, and spread the word about the Gym Masters Show live series. Our show is something different every single episode. It's like a traditional old school talk show, conversations like Carson and Cavett, warm, inviting. Sometimes our episodes are through the roof, funny and entertainment and music and all kinds of stuff. And sometimes they're heart to heart. well, I would say every episode we do tend to go in that direction, but sometimes they're so poignant and inspiring. Everybody's moved, as I am, as our viewers are, as I know you are, in sharing the story. So this has been rich, and this has been invaluable, and this has been quite beautiful. So yeah, this might be something where, like you say, when you see that, it might be something. So it's still happening.
Okay. Do you have a local to you person that you can get a hold of, an organization that you can get a hold of? You won't be okay until you know you're safe, hon. Safety has to come first. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE. They should be able to hook you up with someone local to you who can help you with this, because it's not okay that he keeps coming and doing this. That's horrific. It not only did he not learn anything, it's endangering you now. And that's what needs to be corrected right now, is you need to be in a safe place. So that's what shelters are for. They are there to help and support you in that process. And sometimes that means you need to go to a shelter and they'll help you be in a place that is good for you. Sometimes they'll move you from one shelter to another. They'll do what they need to do. I spent 4 months underground. I know how that goes. But it's really important that you get a hold of someone who can help you with this, because you aren't going to be able to do it on your own. Yes, you can do it.
Here's the number. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE. Safe for anybody watching, anybody that's watching this.
And if you go to the hotline.org, you can find, they have a chat app that will work with your phone, will work with your computer, and they're available there to help you with this too. They can help with safety planning. They can help you figure this out.
That's thehotline.org. Thehotline.org. O-R-G.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. The nice thing about going online to do this, there is an escape button. So if anything's going on, you just hit escape. And it'll take you, I think it takes you to a weather site or something. It's something totally innocuous.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. This is, again, this is extraordinary what we're talking about here. And I really appreciate your sharing all of this. Again, thehotline.org, everybody. Survival2Success.com is the academy. And of course, 1-800-799-SAFE is the national American USA National Domestic Abuse Hotline number as well.
And if my website, which has been a little funky lately, is down, you can also reach me at cyberadvocate07@gmail.com.
Yeah, say that again.
Cyber Advocate, CYBERADVOCATE 07@gmail.com.
Carissa, thanks so much for joining us. Truly, this was monumental conversation here on many different levels, and if it helps anybody. I mean, we're celebrating you and your incredible work. But it's something that I think can be of great value to anybody watching who knows somebody or they themselves are experiencing any of the things, the myriad of things that we talked about. Sherry Larson says it took her 15 years before she could tell anyone about it for fear of retribution from him. Scary, but you can do it.
Yes.
But do reach out. Absolutely do reach out. All right, gang. Carissa, thank you again for joining us. Truly amazing conversation. And we wish you nothing but, again, continued blessing and joy in your life. We really appreciate this. And I hope the show met whatever expectations that you might have had. And you enjoyed the time with me and our lovely viewing audience around the world as much as I have with you.
It's been wonderful. Thanks.
You're very welcome. You take care and be well, Carissa, okay? And stay in touch.
All right, will do. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Carissa Daniels, not only Miss Classic Beauty International, but founder of Survival2Success Academy. Survival2Success.com is the website to go to learn more about, some of the extraordinary work that she is doing, which is incredible. And she had mentioned the National Domestic Violence hotline number in America. That's 1-800-799-SAFE. They man those phones 24/7. And there's also their website, the THE hot HOT line LINE.org as well. If you need that assistance or you know somebody that does, do reach out. Do reach out. And you're very welcome. It is our pleasure. Like I say, this show is something quite special that we're doing here at the Jim Masters Show Live series on many levels, on many, many levels. You will not be letting your family down. They will understand and be there for you. Absolutely. Sending everybody lovity from Lovity Hall here to the Jim Masters Show Live series. We really appreciate all of this enthusiasm and passion, all these comments, everybody helping one another. And if you enjoyed this episode, of course, as we say, what helps our series continue to grow and to deliver all of this extraordinary content day in and day out of a myriad of different topics and guests and celebrity friends and just so many different things we do on our talk show series, do give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section. The comment section is the section right under the episode. Leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, click the thumbs up icon, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the notification bell icon that you see there. It's a little bell icon right there next to the subscribe word. When you click the bell there, you'll be notified of all of our episodes, and you'll never miss anything, especially live episodes of our series. Gang, we thank you very much for being with us. We don't say goodbye around here. We say see you later. Take care. Ciao. Cheers. Sláinte. Shalom. Sayonara. Hasta la vista. Avida Zane. Moi Loop. Cheerio. Take care. Be well. We love you all. And thanks for joining us on this episode of the Jim Masters Show Live series. If you missed anything or there's anything you think would be of value to somebody that is watching, definitely share this episode link on your social media or what have you so they can watch it and learn. Got some really amazing photos here as well. There's a terrific one. There's Carissa. There's Carissa as well. And of course, you remember her from Star Trek, right? And so much more. And that's fantastic. We really appreciate Carissa Daniels joining us here as a special guest on the Jim Masters Show Live series. All right. You're very welcome. Thanks for the comments that are coming in. And Kathleen, thank you and everybody for these wonderful comments. Sherry Larson says, as I said, my prayers are with you. Believe in God and he will be there for you He is my strength, got me where I am today. You're very welcome, everybody. Thank you, Jim. That was an amazing show. The pleasure is all mine. Be well, everybody. Take care of one another. Love one another. Be good to one another. And continue to watch, support, share, and revel in what we're doing here at the Jim Masters Show live series. We'll catch you on the next episode. Extraordinary guests coming up all week for you. Check our YouTube channel. Scroll through. You see the guests that are coming up and many, many more. We're still working on building the episodes and creating them. So incredible stuff. And over the weekend, Jacques Pepin, the extraordinary chef, was with us. If you missed that episode, that's there, and so many others. Binge watch hundreds of episodes on our YouTube channel for your enjoyment and pleasure. This is Jim Masters. Thank you for your time this time. Till next time, right here on the Jim Masters Show, live coming at you from Lovety Hall here in the USA. Be well, take care of one another, love one another, and don't forget to love yourself. We love you all. Cheers.